So good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Katie Rice. I'm a Marin County supervisor. I'm a resident of the Ross Valley, San Anselmo in particular. I also sit on Fire Safe Marin as their honorary chair. I have no voting power, but that means I get to say whatever I want as well. We are here today. All of you, welcome. I'm so glad so many folks showed up. This is an event, our Marin Wildfire Forum today is a Fire Safe Marin sponsored event along with Marin County Parks, One TAM, Marin County Fire Chiefs Association, the County of Marin, and many, many individuals have taken part in putting this together. There are residents from across the county here today. We've been sort of tracking zip codes. We've got electeds from across the county here today, council members and supervisors, and we've got community leaders from across the county here today. Today, May 4th, is National Wildfire Prevention Day, and this is National Wildfire Prevention Month. But as we know from recent history, wildfire prevention and emergency preparedness now demand near year-round attention and action. Wildfire, like flood or earthquake, knows no boundaries. The program ahead today is going to take a look at our wildfire threat here in Marin County and what we can do about it through a countywide effort and through a countywide lens. Our speakers are going to provide information on the prevention efforts that are going on here today across the county, on progress we've made to date, and also on the challenges that we've identified going forward, and how addressing those challenges is going to really require a countywide collaborative approach. That's what's going to need to happen if we truly hope to make Marin as wildfire safe and emergency prepared as possible. So the program overview. So we're going to begin with an overview of sort of our fire history and sort of what this new fire environment looks like under climate change. We're going to have a presentation by Shanamara Dewey, Dr. Shanamara Dewey from Paradise on her evacuation story. We're going to have a panel presentation around Marin getting ready together, examples of what's happening across the county in land management, from our land manager's point of view, at the community level, and at the neighborhood level. And then we're going to have a second panel where we'll hear from fire chiefs about specifically the challenge they're seeing within our community and how we might address those challenges going forward. Following that, we're going to have some time for Q&A. There are question cards, I believe, on your chairs are available somewhere around or being passed around, and those will be picked up. And so that'll be an opportunity to also sort of get into some of the questions coming from residents in the community. And so I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rich Shortall, who is president of Fire Safe, or chair of Fire Safe Marin. You have to stand up for that part.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Rice. We appreciate that, and welcome everybody. We have a busy agenda today, so I think I'll just kind of get right on it. Our first presenter today is going to be Marin County Deputy Fire Chief Mark Brown. He was the operations chief at a number of the large fires we had in the last few years. That would include the Paradise Fire, the Nunn Fire, the Thomas Fire down in Ventura, and he's going to speak about today's fire environment.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? All right, and I'm a bit of a wanderer, so I'm going to stay down here. But before I get started, I got a little video for you. It's a pretty powerful video, so here you go.
In the western United States, I believe something like 5 or 6 states within the last 10 years have had the largest wildfires they've ever had on record. Fires which exceed any of the kind of previous experience we've had with the size, intensity, ferocity of fires up until this last decade or so.
As the heavy cloud of smoke parked over much of LA and beyond, blocking the sun, making the air so thick, air quality officials issued a smoke advisory.
What's going on in the background of all of this is you have climate change, which is constantly pushing the conditions to be drier, the fuels to be drier, the weather to be more extreme.
Oh, you can feel the heat. Holy shit.
There just simply aren't enough firefighters to help fight this fire because of the sheer number of fires and also the size.
We're seeing large fires in landscapes born and bred of fire now being destroyed by fire.
So as the video started to touch on, and this slide touches on as well, fire is an important part of California. Fire is a natural part of California. And California's ecology needs naturally occurring fire to stay healthy. And we've interrupted that cycle. Back in 1910, numerous fires across the nation prompted the fire service to adopt what was called a 10 a.m. rule. We wanted all wildfires suppressed by 10 a.m. the next day. So we've interrupted that natural cycle of ecology in California so that the vegetation, the forests, can stay healthy. But as you'll see, we've painted ourselves into a corner a little bit. We've had climate change. We've all seen the climate change. We've seen the drought. Years and years of drought has made that forest that we've already made unhealthy by the total suppression even more unhealthy because the droughts just stress those fuels so much more. Climate change has also caused the fire season to increase by 84 days since about the 70s. 84-day longer fire season. And during that same amount of time of the fire season increasing, the population of California has nearly doubled. So we continue to push people further and further into the wildland. Where there are people, there are ignitions of wildland fires. Human-caused fires are the #1 cause of fire in California. And now that we've got the people that are living in the wildland, that's where we've painted ourselves into the corner. We have to go out and suppress that fire. We have to go out and defend the lives, save the lives, defend the structures. So, and as we've seen, fires are growing bigger. They're burning faster. They're burning with so much more intensity. More communities are being threatened. We're having to spend many more millions of dollars on suppression costs. Insurance costs are going up. And as firefighters in the western United States, we have the opportunity to go all over and witness what's going on with all these fires and see how things have changed over the past 30 years. 2013, we had the Rim Fire near Yosemite, right? 2014, the King Fire near Tahoe. Those of us in the fire industry who looked at those disastrous fires, how aggressively and how much energy was coming off those fires, we're going, okay, those are unique events. Well, now we're in 2019, we're looking back at 2013, and we realize those weren't unique events. Those were just the fires that were the first fires of what today's fire environment is. And let me share you some other observations. The Rocky Fire in 2015 in Lake County. Now, Lake County burns a lot. Lake County is very prone to fire. I was on the Rocky Fire. I was with a bunch of other guys who have been on numerous fires in Lake County. They know how those fires burn. And we're watching the energy that's coming off that fire. And we're going, how is so much energy coming out of this? It shouldn't be burning like this. The answer is the fuel conditions. The fuels that were available to burn just had so much energy to be released that that's why they're burning with so much more intensity. That's why they're harder for us to extinguish. Fast forward to the Detweiler Fire near Yosemite in 2017. Normally, if a terrain feature worked for us to catch a fire once, it's going to work for us again. We went to the Detweiler Fire and we were told the fire never crosses this road. We always hold it at this road. It didn't hold at that road. The fire never jumps to Merced River. It jumped to Merced River. 4 times we were told there were places the fire never jumps. 4 times the fire jumped at. They're not only burning bigger, they're burning faster. We all know that the Tubbs fire back in 2017 in Santa Rosa and the Hanley fire in 1964. Nearly an identical footprint, except the Tubbs fire jumped 101 and destroyed Coffey Park, which obviously didn't happen in 1964. So it burned a little bit further. However, the Hanley fire took 2.5 days to get where it got. The Tubbs fire, 6 hours. Do you see how they're burning faster now? Then another observation that we've had is that we've been, for years and years and years, we've been talking to you all about making your homes defendable. We want to change that mindset, and we need your help to do it. We want your homes to be survivable. We need your homes to survive without a fire engine being there. Because quite frankly, the homes outnumber the fire engines, right? There's no way we can ever put a fire engine on every house. I'll give you 2 reasons why. That 3 or 4 acre fire that ignites can be on homes faster than we can ever get a fire engine there. And we need that home to survive. Then I'll use the Nuns fire as an example of why we need homes to be survivable as well. 8,000 acre fire, 35 fire engines committed to that incident. Not very many fire engines for 8,000 acres and thousands of homes. And we were putting all of our efforts in steering the fire away from Glen Ellen because that's where all the lives were. However, we had low intensity flanking fire that we didn't have the resources to put engines on, destroying homes. Just because simply I didn't have enough fire engines to put there. So we need the homes to be survivable. We need your help to get the homes survivable because it's really not these big walls of fire that are destroying homes and communities. It's the embers that are coming off the vegetation, and it's the embers that are coming off of homes that are causing home-to-home ignition. So if we can make homes survivable, they don't ignite, they don't create the embers that are igniting the next home. And that's where we need your help.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. So now I'd like to introduce Todd Lando, who's a retired Marin County firefighter, and he is the coordinator of Fire Safe Marin.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. I think we'd all agree that history tends to repeat itself, and that's especially so with wildfires. Geography, weather patterns that are local patterns tend to contribute to those fires, and it's one reason fires repeat themselves oftentimes over and over again. In 2017, the New York Times, the full front page of the New York Times, overlaid a map of the 1964 Hanley fire that Chief Brown just mentioned with images of maps from the Tubbs fire. They burned the same place, and that's going to happen again. They missed the fact that that fire also burned in 1923. They hadn't looked back that far. So it happens over and over again. That's why it's so important that you look at the list that's on the wall on each of these screens. The Marin, we live in a place where major fires have happened over and over again. I challenge you to look on that list of major fires from 1859 to 2019 in Marin County and see if your neighborhood isn't within the boundary of one of those fires. In all likelihood it is. This county has burned over and over again and will continue to, frankly. So that's a list of major fires, big fires, fires that would be difficult to control even with the modern technology and fire service that we have today. But what you really probably ought to be concerned about is our history of catastrophic urban conflagration type fires. 2019 is the centennial, the 100th anniversary of what was probably Marin's first urban conflagration type fire. It burned in Sausalito, of all places. It's called the Hurricane Gulch Fire. Burned dozens of homes at a time when there were only dozens of homes to burn. Started a significant period, 1923, just 4 years later. 1923 was the largest wildfire Marin's ever seen that we know of, at least in our history, the written history. Burned 50,000 acres from Novato, really burned to the ocean. It destroyed the town of Woodacre, where I live. It destroyed dozens of homes, again, at a time when there were only dozens of homes built there. This was the beginning of a sea change in our feeling about wildfire in Marin. 1929 is the one that's probably got the most attention. The Great Fire in the city of Mill Valley burned 110 homes, about 1,200 acres. Significant event in Marin's history. There are still people who remember that fire. 1945, the old mill fire burned from Samuel P. Taylor Park to the ocean. A tremendous fire up and over the top of Mount Tam. Just a huge swath of land, a big change. Soldiers coming back from the Pacific, or the war in the Pacific, helped fight that fire. 1995, one that we can, many of us will remember. Many of us in the room fought this fire. The Vision Fire in West Marin in Inverness burned 12,000 acres. 45 homes. Significant event. It happened just 4 years after the famous Oakland Hills tunnel fire. In the process, I think it's important as we talk a little bit about history, and I'm going to wrap this up in 1 second, that you understand that in Marin, we've been fighting these fires for a long time. The Tamalpais Forest Fire District, created in 1917, was the first of its kind in the nation, a local forest fire district, a fire department dedicated to fighting wildfires. It should be really significant to you as a resident of Marin County that that was here. This history is going to happen again. We've been suppressing fires since the 1800s, but really aggressively since 1917. And again, that's created conditions that make it more difficult today to control wildfires than ever. I want to introduce really our keynote speaker. On November 8th of 2018, which is just barely 6 months ago, I received a phone call. This was early in the morning, the first day of the campfire. It was a call from a dear family friend whose sister lived in Paradise. When I picked up the phone, she was in tears. She said, "My sister's trapped. There's fire all around her. She can't find a way out of town." Tough phone call to take at the time. I said, "Stay by your phone. I'll call you back. I'm calling your sister." I dialed her sister. I got a busy signal 3 times. On the 4th time I got through, I was surprised she picked up the phone. I said, "Shaunamar, how are you? Are you okay?" And she said, "I'm fine, Todd. How are you? How are the kids?" Then I thought, well, who knows? I said, are you in trouble? Is there a fire? And she said, yeah. She said, "Everything's on fire. There's fire all around me. I don't know the way out of town. I'm stuck in traffic." She kept her cool. She survived the fire to be here today. She's going to share her story. Dr. Shaunamar Dewey is a world-class whitewater kayaker, professor, PhD in molecular physiology, smarter than the rest of us combined. And she's going to tell her story.
Hi. I will argue with the world-class kayaker, no. And as I tell my students, it's not about being smart, it's about working hard. So I know we've all been there. Thank you for the introduction, Todd. I'm pleased to be here today, and as you guys can imagine, as a college instructor, as a whitewater kayaker in one of the best seasons we've had in the past 15 years, I have a lot of places I could be today. I prioritized being here in the hopes that hearing my story can help you, any of you or all of you, whether it's as an example of calm decision-making, as Todd implies, or through the analysis of the several instances I believe could have gone better. The number one hope is that you'll never be in my shoes, but we would be naive to think that it's not a possibility. Any Game of Thrones fans out here? You know what they say in Game of Thrones?
Winter is coming?
In California, it's the opposite. So in my presentation, I've taken these estimated fire progression map images that were put together. It's a simulation put together by a combination of computer fire modeling, real-time observations, 911 calls, and reports from fire personnel and first responders that were on the scene. The personal time stamps, as a whitewater kayaker, we have incidents that happen on the river. We're used to making fast decisions, sometimes life Lives are on the line, not often, but it happens. And after every incident, we analyze it and we talk about it and we debrief and we learn from that so that hopefully the next time we can have a better response, hopefully prevent the incident. So I did, right after the fire, start writing my story, and we put together some timestamps. Most of them are from texts and social media, things that I can trust, like this was happening at that time. And so I've gone through that and just picked out a highlight, and I have 15 minutes to summarize 4 hours of a unique time in my life, and I will do my best to keep it very quick. Where were you the evening of November 7th? Just think about it for a second. We had received 2 texts from PG&E that day saying, high winds, high fire danger, your power might be turned off. Has anybody received that text? I know it's fairly common. So that's one reason. I just learned this year that since the drought's over, we're now saying it was 7 years of drought. So, but we all knew it's been dry, and it's been dry for years. The Tubbs fire had happened in 2017, and I don't know if this got on your radar, but we had a fire start 3 miles from my house at 3 p.m. the day after the Tubbs fire started at 11 p.m. the night before. And when I stepped out and I got a text saying my house was near a fire, I saw all the smoke. That was actually from the Tubbs fire. And we were just lucky that the wind had died down that day. If the wind had not died down, what happened during the campfire would have happened in 2017. So I think wind is a really big deal, and that's one of the main game changers that's happening right now. Intellectually, I knew it was a really windy day. Tubbs fire, car fire had happened just several months before. A friend of mine lost his home in that fire. Delta fire, my parents were evacuated for a week. The fire was 3 miles from their house. But it wasn't windy when it was 3 miles from their house. The car fire obviously was really windy. It was a firestorm. And so intellectually I knew PG&E, high wind, it's hot. There were reasons why that night I had nightmares of a firestorm. It seems prophetic, but it really was just normal to dream about fire at that moment. And so all night I was having nightmares, and anytime I would wake up or half asleep, I'd say, well, that's it. If there's a fire anywhere near us, I'm gonna leave first thing. First thing, that's my promise to myself. I don't care. If it's anywhere in your town, I'm out of here. So I wake up at 7 a.m. and I check the CAL FIRE Twitter feed. I joined Twitter just to follow CAL FIRE. I've done this before. I've done it countless mornings all summer. There's never a fire. So I'm ready to just put down my phone and shake my head at my paranoia, right? There's the tweet. So I'm told I can't point, so you guys can all see it. The yellow dot. The green is my approximate location in Paradise. Camp Creek. Now, we drive up Highway 70 to go kayaking all the time, so in my mind, that's 40 minutes away. I know exactly where this fire is starting. I also know that it's, as the bird flies, a lot closer, so I'm thinking 10 miles. And my husband's talking to me, and he says, I was just dirt biking over there. There's tons of road access. They're gonna get their engines in there. They're gonna have that thing shut down right away. Don't worry, don't worry. So this is at 7 a.m. we start this conversation. We've since mapped it. It was 7.8 miles away from my house when it started. Fire started at 6:51 in the morning. So over the next hour, I kind of forget that promise to leave, right? Like I promised myself, if I followed my promise, we would have left at 7 a.m. Maybe we would have packed for 30 minutes and then left. But you talk yourself down, oh, it's 10 miles. My parents were 3 miles away from the Delta fire for a week. They're fine, they moved back in. Darren, my husband, had packed up everything in the house for the Honey Run fire 3 miles away from our house, and then he just had to unpack it, 8 hours later. So he didn't want to deal with the packing, and you talk yourself down. You believe either what you're afraid to believe is true or what you want to believe is true. And we went with want to. 7:41 a.m., we admire the new paint job on the house. He had literally just hung the shutters the day before. We say, oh, is that smoke? It kind of looks like a cloud. It's probably a cloud. At this time, at 7:30, I have a colleague down at the college who said they saw the smoke coming over the hill, and they called their mom in Paradise and told her to leave at 7:30. She left. It still took her 2 hours to go the 5 miles to get out of town, leaving at 7:30 in the morning. Here we are. Wow, the sunrise is really lasting. It's 8 a.m. 8:01, well, that's a pretty big chunk of ash to fall on your house for a fire that's 10 miles away. Must be a little bit closer. Getting nervous. I don't know this, but you guys see that little tiny yellow dot just up and to the right of my house there? So that's 8:04. You can see the black time marker, 11:08/2018, 8:04:58. Those markers follow the exact moment I cut this image from the simulation map, okay? So 8:04, this is according to the simulation map. Unofficially, the first flames reached Paradise. And CAL FIRE tweet, because that's what I'm following, 8:02 said, it's 1,000 acres. By the way, I'm not a farmer. Acres don't mean that much to me. Is that big? Is that small? I don't know. But they're not calling for an evacuation. At the time, I didn't realize CAL FIRE doesn't do that. I just don't know. You need to follow the sheriff to know when things are evacuated, if you want to on Twitter. Or the town Facebook page, which is how we eventually found out when we were finally evacuated. 8:03 a.m., they evacuate everything from Pence. So that little dotted line just to the closest side of my house, that's Pence. All the way over to Highway 70 is evacuated. That's gonna put a lot of people on the roads starting around 8. In my mind, we're still thinking this fire is 10 miles away. I know that because I can look, and at 8:12, I sent a message to my students saying, this fire isn't really close to Paradise. But I'm a little concerned, there's some ash falling on my house. I'm gonna hang out, I'm gonna pack up just in case. I remember telling my husband, well, I am not leaving for work today without my mother's paintings in my car, because those are irreplaceable. And so we had started packing up. First thing I put in my car was irreplaceable artwork, most of it done by my mom. And as I post that message, by the way, you can see there's more dots in Paradise. And if anything, this progression map is conservative. I think there's probably more dots that don't show up because they're smaller. And so right now, I just want to take a second to ask you what you guys see in these pictures, because I'm a teacher. In A, what do you see? There's no square there. What about in B? Are those lines curved or straight? Do they look curved or straight? Okay, and what do you see in C? Wait, don't say it. Anybody see a bunny? Anybody see a rabbit? Okay. So we're limited to our understanding of what's going on in reality based on our perception. And it's all about our sensory receptors and what the information they give us. But what does that information mean when it hits our brain? It's going to be categorized based on experiences we've already had. That's one of the reasons I'm here today, because this is going to be an experience you're having that hopefully will help maybe recategorize things in the future if you're ever, hopefully, never happens in my shoes. At 8:51, I get a text from my best friend. Are you evacuating from a fire? I say yes. So at this point, I remember we started packing at 8:15 when I sent that first message. Paintings first thing in the car, grabbed some clothes, remembered my toothbrush. We already had the kayaks on the car. We were going to paddle that weekend anyway. So we got all our best gear out because of that. And by 8:41, when we basically, 5 minutes after, finally we look at the Facebook page. That's when we okay, we are evacuated. No, now we should really go. We're not just being paranoid and extra careful. Like, by the way, we're supposed to be leaving. Normally have any of you ever been evacuated from a fire before? You had time to pack. You had time to leave, maybe? No? Okay. A lot of people, when you're evacuated, you have time to pack and leave. I know that's changing, and I know many of you have probably similar stories to mine, or you have friends that have similar or more harrowing stories. You can certainly see many of them on the internet. Listen to them. Learn from every story you can hear. That's hopefully not your own. So we're ready to leave. It's 8:40. It's 8:51. No. What time is it? Yeah, 8:45, like right then, we're ready to leave. I grab one more thing, I tell my husband, this is stupid, let's go. And then as we're getting in the cars, I was like, wait, what about Marcy and Rob? They're our neighbors, they're in their 80s, they don't probably follow Facebook or Twitter. And so I go check on my neighbors. So down in there, you see the 3 greenhouses. One's mine, one's Joe's, and one's Rob's. And Rob and Marcy live right behind us, and I go over there, and Rob's up on the roof putting a sprinkler on the roof. It's windy now. It's dark. It's really obviously turning into a firestorm. We hear explosions and we think it's thunder. Back to that fallibility of perception, right? We're categorizing it. But gradually we start realizing, no, maybe that's really propane tanks, and that's what it is, right? And that's happening over on that far edge of town, you can see. So I'm talking to Marcy. Marcy's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Rob won't leave. She's freaking out. I don't want to drive. She hardly likes driving on a normal good day, right? Her husband's not that nice to her. I'm like, Marcy, let's just take you with us. They've been married quite a while, and And ultimately, Rob's gonna do what he's gonna do, but Marcy was scared. And I said, Marcy, just get in with Darren, he'll take care of you. So while we're packing up her pills and her one bag, and she's freaking out about her cat she can't find, Darren's over talking to Joe in Joe's front yard, and Joe's just like, well, we were gonna go on a trip anyway, and it's like they're having a barbecue. They'll never let it get past Pence. So you can look at the map. You can see where Pence is. You can see where the official fire is, and I can tell you there was more fire past Pence than shows on this map. So as we leave at 9:06, where we can go out the door, Marcy's in my husband's car. We loaded up my car because it's the newest. It has the best gas mileage. It's worth the most money technically. Idiot me. It's on E. But I know the miles on my car. I know that I have 40 to 50 miles. The light's not on yet. Once the light's on, I have 30. It's only 4 miles out of town, you guys. It's all downhill. So it's fine. Our first decision is, do we take the main roads? That would be to hit Billy and go to Skyway or Clark and go down. There's 4 ways out of town going down, 1 way up. So your best odds are to go down. We think, great, the fire's north and east, we're gonna go south and west. And my husband's in front, and so he says, oh, I'm gonna take the back roads. That'll be a little faster. That's the normal way I would sneak around to go to work. So he turns left on Sawmill. I wanna point out, if we went right out of our driveway to Billy, if there's a long line at a stop line right there, we would have shortcutted it, right? Because we'd be right next to the stop sign. That would have put us ahead of like 50 to 100 people. But we didn't do that because we looked at our phones. Did they show traffic? No, it doesn't happen that fast. So we're thinking, green, we're good to go. Like, we're just gonna get out of town, no big deal. We left early, right? We left, surely not everybody else was paying that close of attention. They weren't as paranoid as I was. We're ahead of the curve. We weren't ahead of the curve. So we take these back roads, and as soon as we get like a few cars from our house, we're in stop and go traffic. Not only that, but a handful of streets down, there's fire on our left, a field on flames. Doesn't show up on our timeline progression. We want to turn right on Elliott and get to Clark and go down. We want to go down Clark or Skyway, either way. We know Pence is a bad idea because that's the side the fire is coming from. With wind, fire doesn't just come from one side, right? But the emergency first responders, which, first of all, if there's not a first responder at an intersection, nobody's gonna go. So thank goodness they're there, because at least traffic is moving somewhat. But they tell us not to turn right on Elliott because it's all backed up, so they send us through Elliott. We can't go right. So at 9:16, this is the first time I think, this is way worse than I thought it was. I'm seeing flames. I text a message. This goes out to all my nuclear family and my best friend who had texted me earlier because she was aware we were evacuating. And I say, hey, this is happening. And by the way, I love you guys, just in case. That's the last thing they hear from me. And now we're going down past Elliott, and we're going down Sawmill, which is a narrow road with trees on every side. Paradise has horrible, well, it wasn't initially going to be a town. It was a getaway, right? So it didn't have wide roads and sidewalks and things like that. So at the same time, we're heading south, south and west. The fire does as well. It jumps. You can see those spots starting there. As we're going down, we get flagged past the next intersection. We wanted to turn right on Nunnally. They wouldn't let us. They made us go straight. But I've just seen things up ahead that it's like that same sunrise look. And now I know it's way too long to be a sunrise. And I start doing like that roll down the window thing, right? To get some information from the people passing me. I lost my clock, so I need, hold on. Can you reopen that? So I'm asking these people, what's going on down there? Like, what's going down? You see the flame with the question mark there on the bottom of the page? That's what I think is happening because of the light I see. And so I do a U-turn. And the people were like, yeah, I don't think they're letting you turn right on Pearson. They're not going to let you turn right. They're going to make you turn down there. So I don't want to go into further and then turn around. So we U-turn. Right around that time I meet Barbara, and I don't have time to tell you about Barbara, but I wish I did. So at 9:37, I know 9:51, we're still stuck on Sawmill. And eventually we make it out to Nunnally. By the time we get to Nunnally, there's a house down to the frames on the right. There's fire up really close to the road on the left. We've gone a mile in 1 hour. And there's a lot of interesting interactions that go on. It's a firestorm here. It's windy, it's whipping, it's dark as night, and we see this guy go by on a motorcycle going the wrong way. I had a friend of mine illustrate this memory for us. And 10 minutes later, he comes back by with his dog, and which is my favorite part of this whole evacuation story. Around this time, I also get out of my car and put the leash on my dog in case we have to run for it. He was in the car in front of me. Also around this time, we see a car break down and people push it out of the road. Family with a baby jump in this SUV in front of them, and I'm thinking, do I have room for them? Okay, good, they got in another car. There's another dog running up the street, lost, just like with that look in their eyes, like, where am I, who am I? And I jump out to try to put it in my car, and its owner comes running out of nowhere and says, oh, I got her. And I'm like, oh, good, she wouldn't get in my car anyway. So I still don't know what happened to them. We eventually, by 10:33, we make it out to Clark. We could be home free at this point. This whole time I'm turning my engine off and on again. Every time we're stopped to try to save gas, coasting down every little hill, just milking it. Clark's all downhill, we're good to go. But you can see that fire on Pearson down there. That's why they wouldn't have let us turn right on Pearson. So that was a good choice, possibly. You can also see, I just wanted to go back to this, that spot there where Edgewood was. You may have heard of that road in the news. And so we were glad to get away from that area, but they wouldn't let us go down Clark because they needed to move everybody off. And so they put us onto Pearson. Now we're headed to Skyway. I'm on the phone with Todd, and Todd says, get to Skyway, it's defendable. My husband's in front, so I can't make the choice. And he just can see ahead, and he sees a whole gridlock up there. The gridlock's because that fire headed to Skyway. So we turn left on Scottwood, we go to Row. Neil ends up being the only way out of town. It turns out we head towards it. In kayaking, we say it's important to be good. It's even more important to be lucky. At first, we fly down Scottwood. We hit Row. We're stuck there. Stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. We hit like 6 cars from Row and Neil, and we're there for 45 minutes looking at this. People get out. We ask questions. We stomp on embers. Like, okay, we'll do what we can do. We're firefighters. One group grabs a garden hose from one house to bring it to another house that's closer to the flames. And I think this is partly backed up all the way from 99 on our evacuation route, and that's just why it's just a bottleneck. Eventually, 45 minutes of waiting, and Barbara comes back in the picture, and I'll just tell you that I put all of the things from my car into her car. We backed my car up into a driveway. Todd had told me to put on my running shoes, tie back my hair, and put on long pants, so I had a skirt on. But I could put on the shoes. I tied my hair back. We were ready just in case. The whole time, what do you do? And Todd was in the back of my mind saying, stay in your car, stay in your car. My husband's thinking, wow, we have the motorcycle. We could jump on that. We could both get on that, because it was on the back of his car. The dog can run 20 miles an hour, 25 if he's motivated. Like, we can get out of here, no problem. But at what point do you leave Marcy, right? We have Marcy in the car, right? So he's sitting up there, at what point do we leave Marcy? And I'm so thankful we didn't have to make that decision. I know there were people in this fire that did have to make those decisions. So 45 minutes of staring at fire later. There's a little gridlock. I could tell you the fun story about how we helped break that, Barbara and I. She's a New York City driver. But we get out, and at 12:25, I send this message. We made good progress. Out of the worst trees, mostly moving, seem to be moving away from all active flames. At 12:38, blue sky ahead. You can see where my house is still, or isn't, I don't know, when that happened. At 1:24, I think we're officially safe now. This means we must have made it to 99, and that's what it looked like when we got out of town. That's looking back up at Paradise. So what would you grab? This is us a couple days after. Obviously, we got one cat out, lost the other one. She wouldn't let me catch her. And Wooden, that's a signed autograph version of John Wooden's book. The book I was reading currently, Hemingway, and the book I was going to read next. And then this is where we are now. So hopefully, you guys are never in that position. And it's really worth thinking about, though, what are the scenarios? Play through it. If this happens, then this. If this happens, then this. You will never have the exact perfect map, turn right or turn left. But if you have an idea, don't trust your phone or your GPS. That's one thing Barbara said. I just moved to town. I don't know where I am. Can I get in with you guys? I said, lady, I don't have any gas. You don't want to get in with us. So I'm 5 minutes over, and I'm pleased to be here today, and I hope that you guys I'm glad you're here and you're on preparation, and that is always definitely the best way to go. So thank you.
Shannon Mar, thank you so much for taking on a very compelling story, obviously. So we all see that we need to prepare, so that's what our first panel is going to talk about. In order to prepare, we need to prepare collaboratively. We're all in this together. So we're going to start off with Todd Lando, and sitting next to Todd Lando is Christy Neal, who is the Vegetation Management Program Battalion Chief from Marin County, and they're going to again talk about preparedness from the neighborhood perspective.
Thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Sean Amar. That was fantastic. Fire Safe Marin is a nonprofit that was formed in 1991, just after the Oakland Hills fire. I'm looking at one of the founders of Fire Safe Marin right here. Thanks, Pete. He still serves on our board of directors today. Our goal was to bring disparate groups together to talk about this problem. Fire chiefs created this organization. The fire chiefs knew that they couldn't do this alone. They brought land managers, homeowners associations, private entities, public land management agencies. We've all been sitting at a table together every month for almost 30 years now to work on these issues. Our primary purpose right now is bringing community together and instructing the community on what they can do to prepare. We provide public education programs that I think are critically important for you all to attend. Our Living with Fire programs, they're available on our website, firesafemarin.org/events. You need to attend one of these. We're going to go into depth and details talking about the decision-making process and how you can follow Sean Amar's example when it comes time to evacuate, how you can be better prepared, how you can make the decision earlier. We teach those things. We teach home hardening. We teach defensible space and community organizing and how you can work with your neighbors. One of our primary programs is the FireWise Communities program. I'm going to talk about that more in a second, but we offer neighborhood chipper days to support communities. We support programs like the goat grazing program that Jim Chaka is going to talk about in more detail. Those are adorable baby goats. When they get a little bit older, they come and work for us on fire hazard reduction projects around the county. We have 1,200 goats working right now on projects for Fire Safe Marin and our partners. We manage grants. I'm going to take this moment to make really the first public announcement of a significant grant that Fire Safe Marin's brought in, $1 million grant from CAL FIRE through the Fire Prevention Grant Program. This will be addressing evacuation routes in 7 Marin communities, really 8 communities from Mill Valley to Fairfax, all on the eastern slope of Mount Tam, to reduce vegetation, to reduce fuel and trees and obstructions to evacuation routes to help improve your safety, your evacuation should that day come. We'll be expanding on that and probably working in your neighborhood over the next year to make your evacuation safer. Our FireWise USA program, a really important part of I think who we've become. We work with all of you. I see so many familiar faces here. I see a lot of new people who I hope will join this program. It's a national recognition program. Provides a framework for neighbors to organize, free education tools. It provides a community building structure for you and your neighbors to reduce the risk at home, because really that risk is centered around your home. If your home doesn't burn, your community doesn't burn, you really can do the work in your front yards to make a significant difference. Marin County leads the nation in the FireWise USA program. We have 39 sites. This slide says 36. We've added 3 more in the last 2 weeks since we first worked on this program. Tremendous growth. Marin leads the nation in growth in this program, and by the end of 2019, we're going to lead the nation in the number of nationally recognized FireWise USA sites. We depend on you for doing that. As I move to the next slide and the next presenter, we've outgrown ourselves. We had the capacity in 2017 to support 9 FireWise communities. That's what we had in Marin. We now have 36, 39, and growing by the end of the year, 60 or more. We need to grow with you. Our goal is to expand our program and have the resources to reach out to every one of you. We're not there yet. We really depend on your support for donations and funding and the outreach and the work that you do at your homes will carry our message forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what are the fire departments doing? Obviously, evacuation routes and the vegetation overgrowing those evacuation routes are a concern. So the departments are partnering with communities as well as their local towns, councils, and county DPWs, Department of Public Works folks, to help reduce that vegetation along our roadsides so that we can get in and you can get out. So good partnership there. All the departments are increasing their inspections, defensible space, utilizing their part-time staff, their full-time staff, and seasonals in some cases, although our demands are exceeding our capabilities. And so it's starting to be very challenging keeping up with all the needs to do inspections for defensible space. Evacuation drills. All the departments are working closely with their law enforcement agencies as well as the Office of Emergency Services and utilizing Alert Marin so that we can practice and get familiar with how the evacuation process works. Fire roads. All the departments are working with the land management agencies and their private landowners to help maintain and improve our fire road infrastructure. Obviously, we need those as fire agencies for access to remote areas and to box in fires on the landscape. And so we're continuing to work with our partners. Hardening homes and combined with defensible space is super important, as Mark talked about, survivability. So working with communities and having them take action to harden their homes, roof siding, vents, all those things in combination with defensible space. And obviously, as Todd talked about, departments working with neighbors to come together and create Firewise sites, communities, neighbors working together with an emphasis on a community project, working together. Super important on defensible space, clearing roads, big emphasis on neighbors helping neighbors. And then obviously we're all working hard to increase preparedness and information for the public. So working with all the partners, our land management agencies, our law enforcement folks, Fire Safe Marin on educating people more about how to be prepared.
Thank you, Todd and Christy. You can see that preparedness begins at the lowest possible level, individual households, families, small neighborhoods. The next level up is what does an entire town or a larger community do? Fortunately, we have with us today Chief Tom Welch from Mill Valley, who's going to talk about what they're doing over there.
Thank you, Rich. Welcome, everybody. I think it deserves a little review of what we've been talking about today, just a theme that I want to capture, which is that we are experiencing changing weather conditions. Those changing weather conditions are leading to changing fire conditions. Our firefighters fight fires from the Oregon border down to the Mexico border and everywhere in between. They're coming back and they're telling us stories. We're living those stories, some of them firsthand, and we don't want to live them within our community. Bold changes are needed. You're going to hear about that today. In the western United States, in the state of California, our region in Marin County, at the neighborhood level and at your level. And some of those changes will be painful for you. They'll be painful for our community, but they're necessary. Anything that we do can only be done through partnerships. We have to develop partnerships. So how do we adapt as a community? This is something we've studied at the county level. We've also studied at Mill Valley. We went to these fires. We looked at them. We've reached out to the academics, to the scientists on what we need to do, and we put a program together that I'm going to share with you briefly. If we take no action, we're accepting what's occurred in Sonoma County, in Napa County, in Butte County, in Lake County. So I suggest that we take bold action. In the city of Mill Valley, we put together 6 initiatives that followed a gap analysis of where we were at as a fire-safe community. And one of the 6 initiatives was talking about closing a loophole on building construction, ignition resistive features. Simple things that you can do in and around your home, around the venting, around the siding, and around the roofing can prevent an ember fire, which Chief Brown talked about. And that was a step that we've done. It's an ordinance change. It was a passive process for us. Hazardous fuel reduction is another thing that we were working on right now. And if I told you that the first 5 feet around your home, the first 3 to 5 feet around your home, were probably one of the more important areas that you should focus on, you might not believe me, because the magnitude of the fires that we are fighting are huge. And you think, really, just that much space will help me? And I'm here to tell you that it will. We've also, on our landscape analysis and gap analysis, found 4 real pervasive fuels that live within our community. They were added to by us. We planted them in our yards. We've allowed them to live in our yards, and now it's time to remove them. Acacia, bamboo, cypress, and juniper are 4 of those fuels that we've just allowed to exist. We want everybody to get out of town, period, the end. Anybody who dies is unacceptable to us. We are working on plans, substantial plans. We have substantial plans to ensure that everybody gets out. But there is work that needs to be done on our evacuation routes. Todd alluded to it, clearing back the fuels, fixing the pinch points. As I've said prior, our infrastructure is weak, it's fragile, and it's old, and it needs to be improved. Education is a key element to this. So living with fire, there's classes all over county. Getting informed is one of the first steps to understanding your role in helping us be more fire safe. Firewise communities, all things are excellent. The 5th one, there is a gap in communication. I'm here to tell you that we have a suite of resources to communicate with our community during emergency circumstances. They are all not perfect, but we found that we can make slight improvements in our communication. So we've looked at the long-range acoustical device, an element for notification and providing real-time directions. And then finally, training. Our staff needs to be trained on what to do, how to do it. So in our emergency operations centers, we're bolstering our training there. Our firefighters are receiving new, up-to-date, and extremely contemporary communications. But those were the 6 initiatives that the City of Mill Valley has taken on. And what I have found is even though we can execute these initiatives, we can't do it by ourselves. We need friends, we need neighbors, we need communities to partner with. Otherwise, the strength is the sum of our parts. So that's it.
Thank you, Chief. I think you can see the importance, and we're really going to need your support for this, for new codes, new standards, more enforcement and inspections. So that's critical to move forward. Imagine if you were responsible for 3,500 backyards, and that was what your job was. I have Jim Chaika from the Marin County Parks District. He's the superintendent there, and in order to do that, we need partnerships, which he's going to speak about.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry, I want to stand up. I realize I can't see anyone on this side of the room from where I'm sitting, but good morning. As Rich just mentioned, I think that one of the things I want you to walk away from today is one, understanding a little bit about what's happening across the open space district and what land managers are up to in general. Have a better understanding of what the partnerships look like to take that, and also some concrete actions that you each can take if you're interested in doing more in partnership with our agency to protect your home from in the event of wildfire. So a little bit about defensible space, a little bit about partnerships. We're working really closely with, if you look around the room today and you see someone in uniform, we're working with them to better collaborate on defensible space and vegetation management. So that includes the fire protection agencies, and that includes law enforcement. We're working with homeowner groups that are individuals that are forming fire-wise communities, and that's organizations that help prepare for situations like this. We're working with the environmental community to better partner and make sure that we're protecting our natural resources while we are doing all of, the protection of our life and property. And each year, as Rich mentioned, we're trying to make an impact on the 3,500 backyards that we share across our district. And partnerships are one way to be a force multiplier. It's really difficult for us to have 35 individual conversations, but if we can have a smaller number of those conversations where we are working together with each of you to make a big impact in your community, we can do a lot of work together. Some of the things we've done in the past, on an annual basis, we're mowing 53 acres. And now I'm paranoid because Shanamar was talking about the challenge of wrapping your head around an acre, but that's a lot of space. Just take it. I mean, you don't have to be a farmer to know that. But 145 acres of fuel breaks. And also something that if you're a neighbor, I want to make sure that you're aware of our defensible space permit program. So what that means is if you think about your house, what this picture depicts is, think of your house as the middle of a donut, and around your donut it's 100 feet thick on all sides. Well, sometimes that goes into other people's property. Sometimes that goes into open space property. We at the Open Space District have a process in place where you can do, there's no fees or anything associated with this, the 100 feet of defensible space that you as homeowners are required to do, okay? So if you're one of our neighbors, you're likely to be, or you will be receiving an annual letter that invites you to do just that, and that's cutting grass within 100 feet of your property. For actions that are beyond that, if there's trees of concern, if there's shrubs and other things like that that you are interested in doing treatments on, that would require a phone call. So there's all kinds of information on that on the slide. I know it's too small to see, but if you're a neighbor, you will be receiving one of those things that has instructions on what the contact information is, determine whether a permit is actually required or whether you can just cut the grass on your own, and what some of the best practices are. For example, you don't want to be doing that in mid-August or September when things are really hot and dry. We want to be planning ahead, getting you that notification, and working together to make sure that you're doing taking all the right steps. So those will be going out shortly, and they go out every year. So one of the strategies for defensible space, as folks have talked about before, is grazing. And grazing is one of a really wildly popular program that we have to create that buffer. I think one of the things that the strengths of this photo shows is that we're able to have an impact right up to the back of people's houses. So you see all those homes, and there's fences there that have a lot higher vegetation than what the goats are working on, and those folks have work to do on their property. But what this program does is allows these goats to go through in a very sort of methodical way, in a planned way, to create a large buffer. So that and I have so many slides I'd love to share with you today, but there are many examples of documented photos where you see on the right side of that screen, there's a grass fire that's moving through, and it stops at the place where the grass has been mowed. So it doesn't take goats to do that. There's a lot of different techniques. This is one treatment option, but you don't need goats to do that. Even though they're super popular, you don't need to wait for goats to come through. It could be a contractor do that work. You can use a weed whacker yourself. Staff can do that work for you. There's many different ways to achieve that. But grazing has been really increasingly successful. We had a big partnership last year with the San Domenico School, ourselves, Sleepy Hollow Fire Protection District, and 2 major landowners to graze 100 new acres of property using goats. The thing about this, and the reason that I think it's an easy program to support, but one of the reasons it's important to support that, these individual efforts protect your community, but it also protects the communities next to you when those things occur. If there's an ignition, any ember that we can stop from going to another place is another wildfire prevented. So this is a program that we are really excited about, and our folks are tabling here today. There's other land managers out there that are tabling today, so I encourage you to stop by the table to learn more about that program. And then in terms of another partnership, I just want to highlight is a new partnership with the Marin County Fire Department, Fire Protection District. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've been working with all these agencies in partnership for a long time to develop some really intentional plans and projects. We are using $2.3 million over the next 2 years to work with a dedicated fire crew from the Fire Protection District, a 14-person fire crew, to work on all these types of projects, to enhance the projects we're always doing and to identify new locations where we can make an even big impact than we are now. So we're developing that project list now. But an example of the types of projects that that you're likely to see is, one, we partnered with the Nevada Fire Protection District to obtain a $70,000 grant for the Pacheco Valley area. And that's going to be, a lot of these projects going to be cutting grass, it's going to be removing vegetation, woody vegetation, down trees and things like that within that defensible space zone. Another example is of a partnership that we're focusing on is our partnership with the Conservation Corps, which is a local nonprofit, a $200,000 grant to partner with them and the local fire protection agencies to do work in the Kent woodlands. So there's so many ways that we can work together and make a bigger impact than we're currently doing. But I want to make people aware that this is coming down the pike. Our crews are going to be starting in this Marin County Fire Partnership starting July 1st. My contact information is, I've got cards on the table that's outside. If to the extent you can work through your local communities, your fire protection, your Firewise community groups, your neighborhood response groups, your CERTs, whatever your mode of working with your neighbors are, to reach out to us to help identify projects that might benefit from this program that we have with the Fire Department, Fire Protection District, then please get in touch. And I think that's it. Thank you for your time. I look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Jim. I live in Sleepy Hollow, and every morning for the last 3 days I get up, I look across at open space land across the valley, and there's the goats working up there. If you haven't seen them in action, it's really worth it. Come on out to Sleepy Hollow or Terra Linda and check them out. Probably one of the most controversial issues that come up after every large fire has to do with alert and warning. So today we have Chris Riley, manager of the Marin County's Office of Emergency Services, with us today to talk about Marin's alert and warning systems.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. So what Sheriff's OES does, Office of Emergency Services, is during disasters, our main role is to support field operations and coordinate resources. That's, in a nutshell, what the Office of Emergency Services does. And one of those ways that we support field operations is with alert and warning, so emergency notifications. And we have a lot of different tools to do that. And I'm going to cover the status of those tools, two of the important tools and two of the tools that you've been hearing a lot about. So that's wireless emergency alerts and Alert Marin. So I'll start with generally emergency notifications. So using our Alert Marin, which most of you have probably heard about, we have the capabilities of reaching 100% of the homes and 100% of the people that live and work in Marin County. But we need your help to complete that. We have most of the landlines, probably about 95%, maybe a little bit more of the landlines that are in our system so that we can notify people in Marin County. The piece that's missing that we're working on is the mobile phones and getting your email so that we have a number of ways to contact people when it's time to send out an alert warning. So if you haven't done so already, we encourage you to sign up for Alert Marin. Also, you can see Woody out on our table out there, and you can actually sign up today. So the two programs that I want to talk about, the two tools that we have for alert and warning, the two main ones, there's many others, but the two I want to talk about today because there's a lot of changes, a lot of improvements mostly that are going on. So the first one is wireless emergency alerts, and the second one I want to talk about is Alert Marin. So wireless emergency alerts, most of you probably know this, as Amber Alerts. Basically what they are is this is a federal program. It's a federal service. It's actually offered by FEMA. We are one of the authorized government agencies that can use this tool to send out emergency notifications. There's currently three types of notifications that can go out. One is known as presidential alerts, which is hardly ever used. Amber alerts, or an imminent threat. Actually, one of the improvements that I'll talk about soon is they're creating a new category that makes it easier for us to send out alerts, and it's public information or public warning. That's a new category. So basically what they are is they're short messages, currently limited at 90 characters that we can send out. There's actually a couple of different systems that we can use to send out these messages. It's based on cellular technology, so it's reliant on using the cell towers to send the messages out to mobile phones. as long as that mobile phone is WIA enabled, and most of the modern phones are nowadays. So it's reliant on those cell towers. We use it generally for notifications to a very wide area about a very big issue. So one of the great things about WIA is that you don't have to opt in. You know, it's a service that's provided by the mobile telephone companies and the federal government. We're able to send messages out. So that's a good thing. It's also very fast. It's one-to-many because it uses the cellular-based technology. And you know, you immediately receive a text on your phone. So some of the limitations are that it is, because it is cellular-based, it's reliant upon cellular communication. So if you're in an area that doesn't have good service, then that's a bad thing. And oftentimes in large fires, many of the cell phone towers are burned down, and so that ruins our availability for sending out the message. So those are some of the limitations. Let's see, it also has a unique ringtone vibration. I'm sure some of you have probably experienced some of the tests that have gone out recently. So there's some new enhancements that are coming to wireless emergency alerts, and they're going to go into effect early in June. And these are all things that are FEMA is rolling out very soon. So they're going to expand the message length, which is a good thing, so we can actually craft a very specific message about what it is that what's going on and what it is that we need people to do during this disaster. So they're going to increase it from 90 characters to 360 characters, so we can send you a more specific message, which is good. Another thing that we're able to do is send out messages in Spanish because there's large numbers in communities all throughout California that are Spanish-speaking only, so that's a good enhancement. As I said earlier, it creates this new category, public safety alerts, which you know, increases our ability to send out messages of all types, so that's a good thing. And then they're creating this public opt-in test message category to give us some reliability with the system so that we can test it more often and make sure that it works and make further improvements to the system. So that's all good stuff. One of the things that's not on there is another enhancement. We're going to be able to send out links to web pages too, so it'll give you more information. You can click on that link on your smartphone, take you to a website where we can post more information and update it constantly. So those are some of the enhancements that are coming very soon to wireless emergency alerts. So Alert Marin, this is actually our very preferred system for alert and warning, and there's a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that it provides us a number of ways to contact you. So it has all kinds of different contacts. Many of them are already in the system. Others we gain when you register. So we have all of the AT&T, Verizon, now Comcast voice over internet numbers in our system. So that gets us to basically about 95% of the landlines in Alert Marin. I will mention there's been some mention about the difference between opt-in and opt-out. Our system is actually, it's a hybrid. It's really both. Opt-out in the sense that we already have numbers. All the landline numbers are in there, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast now. So all the landlines are in there. You don't have to, those are in there without you opting in, without you registering. What we do need you to do is register so that we can get your mobile number currently and your email, so that that's another path, another way of contacting you during a disaster. Not only do we have landlines from AT&T or Verizon, but we're also able to get numbers from the white pages, yellow pages, and enter all this data into our system. Another reason that Alert Marin is such a great tool for us is that we can geographically locate our notifications. And this is really huge because that's actually one of the limitations of wireless emergency alerts. They say that we can actually go in there and designate a geographic area, but it has bleed over because it's cellular-based technology. So it may be outside the area that we really want to notify, and we don't want to confuse people. So that's what makes Alert Marin such a great system, is that we can very accurately focus on a specific geographic area that we need to notify. We can do that right down to a house, actually, which is pretty amazing, or a whole zip code, or a whole city, or the whole county, if we need to. So one really great thing that's an enhancement that's coming up There's been a couple of bills that have passed. The first one was Senate Bill 821, I believe is what it is, and it required utilities to provide their data to government agencies that have these systems so that we can populate our systems so we can notify people. So we're actually in the process of doing that. That was one of the reasons we got Comcast's voice. We're also going to be working with PG&E to get their database too. So an expansion bill that's coming up that hasn't passed yet is Senate Bill 46. And this is a great one because it expands the definition of utilities to include mobile telephony. So that's all the wireless companies. So once that's done and we can get all that data in our system, we're going to pretty much have 100% coverage for notifying people. We still want you to opt in. We still want you to sign up on alertmarin.org so that we can get your email and make sure that we have your accurate address and all the rest of that information. So that's coming up. Those are some of the enhancements that are happening with Alert Marin. Many people ask, what are the statistics on Alert Marin? How many people are signed up? As I said earlier, we have virtually 95% of the landline phones that are in the system right now. So that's really great. So if you have that, and that's important specifically where I live in Ross Valley and many other places in Marin County where we don't have cell service, I'm going to rely on that landline for getting information. So that's a really good thing. As you can see, the total contacts in our system is huge. It's even more than the population in Marin, which is really great. And there's the registrations that we have. That's the number that we want to build. So again, I know it's repetitive, but we want you to sign up at Alert Marin so that we have all of your contact information. And that's our goal. We want to get 100% of the residents. Even if you don't live here and you work here, you can sign up at Alert Marin. You can give us the address of your office, your school, whatever, and you can sign up so you can get notifications. How do we use them? We use Alert Marin. That's our primary tool, as I said, our best tool. We use that when we want you to take action, basically. So what we do is that's a tool. We work with the incident commanders, whether that's police, fire, or unified command. They tell us, what's going on, what's the message to go out. If it's an evacuation, we find out what the roads are, where to shelter, where to go, and we include that information in the notification that we send out. That's how we use Alert Marin. We want you to take action. We can use it for many other things too, as you see on the slide. Basically any hazard that we face, and we face many here, flooding, wildfires, whatever it is, we'll be using that tool. And that's it.
So thanks, Chris. 100% notification, that's our goal. We can get there. We need your help. Real quickly, how many are signed up for Alert Marin? Yeah, high percentage, not surprised. Good work, everybody. Just as a reminder, we have question cards available, and you can see them on the table over there. If you haven't filled out one or you have a new question, you can drop it over there. We may not be able to respond to every single question today, but there will be a response provided from you when you sign up over there, so we'll get back to you on that. So our local fire chiefs, when you hear all this, it's hard for them to get a good night's sleep. They have a lot to worry about. So how do they go about meeting that challenge? Well, fortunately, we have with us today Marin County's Fire Chief, Jason Weber, and the Novato Fire Protection District Fire Chief, Bill Tyler, and they're going to talk to you about how to meet that challenge.
Rich.
Thank you, Rich. And I just want to really quickly start with a couple thank yous. One is, if you read the recent grand jury report that's out, I think the grand jury did an excellent job highlighting what the hazards are and risks here in Marin County. And I think both the countywide initiative that Bill's going to speak a little to is really in alignment with their recommendations. Also, we can't do this as staff without the support of those that represent all of you, and the Board of Supervisors, specifically, Katie Rice up here, a huge supporter. I see Mayor Phillips in the crowd. I see a lot of fire district board members and city council members here with us today, And we are in this together, and I think you'll hear that when Chief Tyler speaks in a moment. I'm just going to really quickly cover some of the things that we've done leading up to this. There has been a lot of work done in this county from a fire prevention standpoint, but I think all of us in this room, and especially hearing Dr. Dewey's story, we know we need to do more, and that's what this conversation really is about with panel 2, is what's that next step? How are we collectively going to do this together? In 1991, after the Oakland Hills fire, Marin County created one of the first fire safe councils in the state, Fire Safe Marin, our sponsor here today, which has been an unbelievable partnership. In 1995, we had the Mount Vision fire, 12,000 acres out on the coast. We lost 40 homes in that fire. It really woke Marin up to realizing we have to participate at a heavier level in the statewide mutual aid system. We used it much during that event, and we need to build upon that, and we have. In 1996, the state required all CAL FIRE units in Marin County, being a contract county, to do pre-fire planning. They funded 2 additional positions in the pre-fire world. Christy Neal, who's a lightning rod in this arena, has been instrumental in moving us forward. In 2005, a lot of work was done across the entire county to create mutual threat zones. So fire knows no boundaries, our fire agency shouldn't either, and we really do operate as one agency for a lot of different things, but especially when there's fire on the ground. The Board of Supervisors also funded the Tamalpais Fire Crew, which has been doing vegetation management work across the county, and Jim spoke a little bit of the partnership with the land management agencies. In 2009, our first Firewise community, and you heard Todd speak a little bit, we're one of the leaders now in the nation. In 2014, with the support of PG&E, we added fire detection cameras. Those are, I think we have 4, it says on there now. I think we're at 6, and by summertime we'll be up to 10 across the county, so we can monitor events, fires, and respond accordingly. In 2016, a major collaborative effort amongst all of the land management agencies, all of the fire agencies, our private nonprofit Fire Safe Marin, we created the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. This is one of the foundational documents of our decision making, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. In 2017, before the North Bay fires, in a partnership with all of our law enforcement agencies, we did a great deal of training and adopted standard language that we're using for not only road closures, but the types of evacuations, warnings, versus at all levels anyway. We're working together well. In 2017, the Board of Supervisors, after the North Bay fires, recognized that we cannot let this opportunity slide away. We must learn what worked well up in Sonoma County and other areas that had fires, and what can we do here in Marin to identify the gaps we have and fill those voids. And that really brings us to where we're at today. So as I mentioned, in 2016, the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, this is really a science-based document. We took a hard look at all of the information, used GIS to layer that across the entire county, everything from the fuels to where our infrastructure is, to where our population bases are, and any other risks that, including local fire knowledge, fire history, those kind of things. This document is what we use to look to where we invest our resources and how we invest our resources. I mentioned in 2017, the Lessons Learned report. Now this report looked at what happened in Sonoma County. We brought the Santa Rosa Police Chief, the Santa Rosa Fire Chief, the Sonoma Valley Fire Chief, the Cal Fire Chiefs, the Sonoma County Sheriff, and all the land management agencies in front of this panel, and we're able to ask them very candid questions. If you could reverse 10 years, 20 years to October 7th, 2017, what would you have done differently? Where were the gaps in Sonoma County? Why did we lose so many lives? Why did we lose so many houses? And we're able to apply that here in Marin County. We then identified where our primary gaps are, and we started to build a plan to fill those gaps. And Chief Tyler is going to talk a little bit about that now. But we're using the lessons learned, the experiences like Dr. Dewey had mentioned in her presentation, to do this collaboratively together. So I'll let Chief Tyler speak a little bit to what's happening now with a community, countywide, regional approach.
Can you hear me now? Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. My name is Bill Tyler. I'm the fire chief of the Novato Fire Protection District. I also have the distinction of being this year the president of the Marin County Fire Chiefs Association, and we are a group of leaders that represent the over 13 cities and towns with the authorities having jurisdiction for fire protection. We are experts in identification of these and reduction efforts for wildland hazards and risks to our community. We believe in an approach that we are better together. And so we've put a plan, initiatives together that we're trying to roll out across all of the fire agencies and districts. Individually, your fire agencies are doing great work that's out there. We heard from Tom Welch about the 6 initiatives that they have going in Mill Valley. We also know San Rafael is moving forward with a number of initiatives. Novato has done the same thing. But there is a group-wide effort that is required in order to do the best for the most amount of people, for us to be able to scale this up and take advantage of economies of scale. But we don't currently have the resources for that. The recent extreme events that have happened to our neighboring communities have really compelled us to develop these enhanced plans. We want to identify and target and reduce the hazards to the most vulnerable areas. We're trying to use the best science and information. We want to accelerate and disseminate the information to the public. We want to engage citizens in the most vulnerable areas and assess the vegetation and structural risk, inform and advise on critical reduction activities. The program will provide technical assistance and also financial assistance and incentives as circumstances and funds allowed. And we're building upon the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, the lessons learned, and other resource documents. For example, the National Fire Protection Association has a report out called Wildfire Risks, 3 Powerful Tips to Move People to Action. There are over 200 people in this room today. There are over 230,000 people in Marin. We need to reach out to them. We need to get a hold of everyone and create a new reality for folks. So in the fire service, we have a saying that says, keep it simple. So I have one slide to share. It's one very important slide, and it's a very complex problem. You heard earlier from Chief Welch say there needs to be bold new actions that are taken. It's going to require what's called a sea change on behalf of the public. What is a sea change? It's a profound or notable transformation on behalf of the public. That is what's going to have to happen. So let me tell you, I'm going to take you through 6 different initiatives that we think we can pull together. They are resources that we're going to need beyond our capabilities currently, and we're going to need all of you in this room to be able to help support and champion these initiatives as well. The first has to do with expanding the existing fire and fuels crews. We want to do a tremendous amount of fuel reduction work that's out there. We think by expanding the existing fire and fuel crews, there was a picture that you saw of that earlier, that we can actually help manage and do new projects and operations. It will include equipment and facilities that we don't currently have. We want to pursue multiple strategies with regards to reducing fuel in the county. It could be the work crews, it could be more goats, contractors, machinery. We want to do that at the most cost-effective manner, but we need to do it on an ongoing basis. And you heard most of those large projects are now currently just funded through state grants, federal grants, etc. And that's not going to cut it. What we're trying to implement now is coming out of existing budget resources and in some cases reserves. We're going to need to have a new funding source to be able to do these things ongoing. Secondly is our structural ignitability. That's just a fancy way of saying, is your house going to catch fire? And most people don't know anything about these new terms that we're saying. The fear is very high out there. That's probably partially why you're here today. But the understanding about what to do about it for your own home and community neighborhoods is down here. So this gap in between the two is what we really want to close with this type of initiatives. What we want to do is have a countywide effort to evaluate the ignition resistance of structures in our built environment. Marin is largely built out. It was largely built before ignition resistant construction was even a thing, right? So you need to know as a homeowner what you need to do, what changes to make to be able to make your house resist so that we can live with fire. You need to know what to do with your vegetation. And so our plan calls for hiring a cadre of what we're calling hazard mitigation specialists. They can also be thought of inspectors, but in the reality, we need to win people's hearts and minds. We're not there just to cite you, to force you to do something and move on. We need to work with you, hearts and minds, to make these changes, and we think we can do that. So what we're talking about is bringing people on that can go parcel by parcel, that can meet with neighbors on their driveways, walk around their homes, and share with them what we see, what they see, in terms of how likely it is their home will ignite. And there are many different features that take longer than the amount of time that I have right now to share that with you. But if someone was standing with that knowledge at your door and could share that with you, could look at your vegetation and tell you, hey, which ones of these plants are fire prone? There's actually a list of about 42 plants, right, that are out there. So you don't know what those are. We want to help bring that information to you. We want to help you write a prescription for you at your home and give this to you and say, get to work on this. Get started on these things. And we think we can do that face to face, but we need a lot more resources. We need these mitigation specialists to help us do that. We also want to increase our public education and outreach. This requires engagement and support of the Firewise communities that you've heard. Fantastic response. How many in the audience are in a Firewise group that are either leading it or involved in it? Okay, very good. We need to expand on that, but every leader of those groups would admit to you that simply by becoming Firewise is not the silver bullet. That does not get it done. That is the very first step that needs to be renewed annually. It's simply a commitment that they've made. It's an analysis that they've done. It's a plan that they put together that they're now doing. But there's only a few of the Firewise community groups. They need to engage and enroll in all their neighborhoods. So we want to support that with funding, with education. We need to talk more about red flag and what that means in the community. Electronic message boards, newsletters, resource materials, magazines, postcards, news articles, social media, advertisements on buses, advertisements at gas pumps where you fill up your gas. All of these things need to be done and expanded to what they are right now. The alert and warning systems that you've heard, we need additional enhancements. Evacuation planning and infrastructure improvements. We need to do maps that can be given to the public, that can be based on the neighborhood that they live in, so that they can get these and see what they need to do, find out what their alternative routes are, have conversations with neighbors, practice doing that. In an event of a fire, you may not know which way you can turn. We don't know if you can go left or you can go right. But at least this will kind of give you a pathway to think through those things so that when you need to make these alternatives, you'll be more familiar with your surroundings. You can share the information with your kids and with your families and with your parents and whomever. In this mapping effort, we're trying to identify what are called areas of temporary refuge. That name may change a little bit, but if you have to get in your car and you can't get all the way out, they were effectively used in the Camp Fire, also the car fire. Firefighters have been doing this for years, finding safe areas of refuge where they can go and stay in while the fire is burning around. And so we want to extend that same sort of information to the public. It's things like going to your high school, football field where it's very open. So if you're in your car and you know you're not going to be able to get all the way out, let's divert into where the high school is. Let's get into the middle of the grass. Let's ride this thing out. The officials will come in and help organize an evacuation from those points. We want to share that information with you in an expanded way across the whole county. We want to expand a grant program, not just grants that we go after, but we want to grab all the grants that are possible and have a funding mechanism that can fund our own grants, that can have matching grants for people to do work on their own properties, that can incentivize them to do that. Things for folks with access and functional needs, for low-income folks, for seniors and folks that don't know, where to even begin, and partner with them. Give them some funds and seed money to get that work going. So we want to be able to take control of that on our own. And then lastly, fire and building codes. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes over the last 15 years. Many of these changes in code adoption, local ordinances, may be even invisible to you, that they haven't been going on, but they have been making steady changes. Ignition-resistant construction requirements to folks that live in the wildland urban interface areas have been in place for the last 15 years in most of Marin. Our hats off to Sausalito for just recently adopting those same requirements. So we need full penetration on this, and we need folks to get active. There may be some other code changes coming at the state. You heard earlier about clearing, up to 5 feet from your property. That may become the law in California. So we're trying to prepare and position ourselves for that now and share that information with you, at least initially voluntarily, but there may be areas that want to adopt that as a requirement. I think it's coming. So lastly, what now? What are those next steps? These are the 6 initiatives that the fire chiefs have all gotten together. We've shared these with the Marin mayors, the elected officials. We've shared them with the managers, the city managers, and other folks that are administration that make these decisions. And we're meeting regularly with them. We're collaborating together. But we see that we do not have the existing resources that we need right now. There's going to need to be new revenues to be able to bring this in. These are millions and millions of dollars to be able to pull together of funds that we don't currently have. So we're reaching out through groups like Fire Safe Marin, and we are going to have surveys. We're going to send that out to gauge the public support for different ways of doing this, and we'd like you to participate and support these things when you hear them. We need you to be able to talk to your elected officials and give them the strength and the power to make these bold decisions to get this stuff implemented. We're on a pathway and a trajectory to try and bring that back as quickly as we can. So in the interim, all these fire agencies are working on these different initiatives, rolling them out, but we are better together. We need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, chiefs. And I do think it's great to recognize in Marin County that all of our chiefs are on the same page, working together on this, and their outreach to elected officials and to the public. It's ongoing, and that's what it's going to take to move all this forward. We're glad you're here today to hear this. There's going to be a lot more about it in the future, but we really need your help to move these plans forward to make Marin a safer place. We're going to do our question and response right now, but I'd like to invite up a few more people to help us out to respond to some of your questions. First of all would be Mark Van Gorder from PG&E. Mark? And then, Mark, here we go, over here. And then we have John Howard. Is John here? And John is representing the Central Marin Neighborhood Response Group. And then last but certainly not least is Amy Bach from the United Policy Holders Insurance. And they're here to help us respond to some of the questions. Okay, so let's get this started. The first question is kind of multi-part, and that is, and this is probably our most common one that we receive all the time, how do I get a fire hazard cleared? Of course, it's always on the neighbor's property or public space or a vacant lot, whatever, but we know how that works, so I'd like to turn it over to the panel to deal with how we respond to that.
So one of the first things we'd like you to do is talk to your neighbor about that perceived hazard. We don't like to get in the middle of the neighborhood disputes, but we really want you to work together as a community and a neighborhood. So talking with your neighbor about your concerns is the first step. The second step would be to go ahead and call the jurisdictional fire agency, and they can come out and determine whether it really is a major fire hazard, and they'll do an inspection, and they'll inspect your property too. So make sure that you've done your work, and we can work together to figure out a mitigation practice.
Jim, you want to?
Well, I think I touched on this earlier, but I just will reiterate the defensible space permit program that county parks has, and open spaces and other land managers do too, that if there's a hazard that's within 100 feet of your house and it's on an open space property, then simply get in touch through the contact information that's provided at the desk. A lot of times, just like what Christy was just saying, is we will partner with them to determine whether that threat is something that's real or whether it's something that may not really impact the safety of, against wildfire. So I think the first step is reaching out to us, and then through partnership we'll have a discussion and figure out what the next steps are to deal with that.
Great, thank you. The next one's also a two-part question. I'll do the first part first. So what is the evacuation plan for my house or neighborhood? Todd, you want to take that on?
Your evacuation plan needs to start in your home. I don't want you to turn to the fire agencies or look for some type of written plan until you've looked internally. Firesafemarin.org. Our website provides an evacuation guide. It will walk you through your personal planning. It will tell you what other documents and plans that you might turn to based on your community, but you really need to start at home with a personal analysis of your preparedness, putting together a Wildfire Go kit, looking at our checklists, which are available at the tables out here. You need to go through those checklists, go through them now. It's an actual checklist that you should use during an emergency, but I want you to go through it this afternoon. Your plan starts with yourself, understanding the routes in and out of your neighborhood, looking for two ways out. One of the frequent questions I get is, my community only has one way in and one way out. Which way do I go? And I tell people that you just answered your own question. That's the way you've got to go. And I think importantly, that translates to working with your neighbors who may live along that evacuation route. If your neighborhood has parking problems that obstruct roads, if you have vegetation that encroaches on the roadway, you need to work as a community to address that now. Don't wait until the November 8th when the fire is bearing down upon us. Start the work now. Firewise community program, I think, should be the start of your evacuation plan, truthfully.
Right.
Can I add to that? Yeah, go ahead, Tom. I was just talking about the TV maps that exist.
The other piece of evacuation, there's really two things. One is that we're really trying to redefine what evacuation means for everybody, because I think that most people look at evacuation, they say, that is for me to get to Oakland or San Francisco or to Santa Rosa or somewhere out of the area. But the real definition is to move from harm's way to non-harm's way, to move you out of the area. And so we have various maps, mutual threat zone maps, that we're scrubbing right now to be able to share with you along with the checklists so that you'll have a neighborhood-specific plan. But once again, for our friend down in Paradise, many people move to these community refuge areas and we're safe. Firefighters have been doing that for decades. So move from harm's way to non-harm's way.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is a question I'm going to ask Chief Brown to respond to. This comes up all the time in my neighborhood, and that is, should I use a fire road to evacuate from my house?
I can make it a one-word answer, but I'll give you some background first. The one-word answer is no. But let me give you a background to that, and let me start it with a little bit of fire behavior. Fire wants to burn uphill, and fire wants to burn downwind. And as you guys have all recreated in Marin, where have you felt more wind, down low or up high? Where are all these fire roads leading? Up high. So if you take a fire road up and away from your community, which is where the majority of the fire roads are going, you are putting yourself at more risk. We also have a thing that we call the common denominators of wildfire deaths for firefighters. And guess what? Where those fire roads that you're talking about are taking you to those areas that firefighters are dying. You see this nice, lushy green meadow and you think that's where you're going to be safe? That's where more firefighters die. So what do we do when your route of egress is blocked by fire? Well, part of it is if we all make our homes survivable, we don't have to drive through that barricade or that blocked road by fire. We can actually hold a little bit next to some homes that have been made survivable, because usually the fire is only threatening the road for 10, 20 minutes. Stand back a little bit, let the fire subside, then drive through. And I think Dr. Dew will agree with me on this. Don't leave your car. If you, for some reason, you leave your car, which we don't want you to do, don't park it and leave it in the middle of the road. Because then it burns up. Now you just block that road for when the fire subsides, no one can get by. But please think about more than just this direction when you're evacuating. Look left, look right, backing up a little bit might be your solution.
One more follow-up. Is it better to take a car or the open bed truck?
Yeah, whatever vehicle you have, and what we really want you to do is to carpool. It sounds kind of funny to think about carpool when we're evacuating, but the fewer vehicles we put on the road, that makes everyone else safer. For being able to evacuate your belongings, a closed vehicle is going to be safer for you. If you put some flammable items in the back of your truck, you do run the risk of embers landing in the back of your truck. But we just want you to take a vehicle.
Great. Thank you. Okay, and next, how do I get more involved in my neighborhood?
I think the Firewise USA program is your solution in your neighborhood. The number of people in this room right now who are active in our Firewise USA program is tremendous. It's growing fast, and it's the best way we've found to get neighbors to work with neighbors. That really is where all of these solutions start, whether it's an evacuation planning or vegetation management around your homes. You just can't do this by yourself. You've got to work together. Our Firewise community program, reach out to us, attend a Fire Safe Marin meeting, look online, contact me or your local fire agency. We all work together as part of that process. We'll walk you through the whole program, organizing your neighborhood.
John, you want to add to that?
So the neighborhood response group. So the neighborhood response. There we go. So the NRG program, Neighborhood Response Group program, provides the model for you to get involved. And the NRGs have often provided the conduit for information and have provided the structure, the mobilization to get the Firewise program installed. So how many people here are aware of the NRG program, actually are involved in an NRG program? Now, that's pretty good. And it's only in the central Marin towns at this point, but it is a way for you to get involved and to make your neighborhood more prepared. You can go to nrgmarin.org and read all about it.
Great, thank you. All right, so here is a question for Pacific Gas and Electric. What has your company been doing to improve the infrastructure?
Sure. That is a much longer answer than I have time to give. So the first thing I'd like to encourage everyone here in the room to do is we have a table out in the back. There are a lot of materials, and there are people staffing the table to answer the questions. High level, and it goes along the lines of what a lot of folks have talked about here today about hardening homes and removing vegetation. That's what we're doing to our system. So we are removing vegetation away from the lines that could fall into the lines, trees that are dead, dying, diseased. We're evaluating and assessing all the trees that are along our lines throughout our service territory, Marin County. We are inspecting all of our transmission towers, all of our transmission lines and distribution lines. All of those inspections are nearly complete. They create a priority of tags for any repairs or replacements, and they have crews that are actively working to fix those lines as we speak. And that's going to continue throughout the months to come. On top of that, and again, I think this is a little bit more detailed and too long to answer. During the winter time, we have a mechanism called a recloser. And so if you get a momentary outage during wind and rain and whatnot, during some of our larger storms and the lights flicker in the home, those reclosers will test to see if it's safe to have electricity run down the lines. If it's raining, not too much of a concern. Having those mechanisms test for electricity or energize those lines during this summertime, August, September, October, high fuels, low humidity, high winds, we will be disabling those. And the main point is, if Mylar balloons get into the lines, if a bird or an animal touches the lines, or a car hits a pole, or there's some other thing that gets into the lines that stops the power, those automatic reclosers will be disabled, and we will have to patrol the lines and visually inspect them. So it could take an hour or 2 hours. It won't be the momentary outage that you see or experience in the winter. It will last longer. It's for fire safety. And I would encourage, if I can say one last thing, please, again, visit the tables and pick up some of our materials. We are asking people to do in the same way that we have the Alert Marin, people who signed up for Nixle. We would like to get your updated contact information. And you can do that by going to PG&E My Wildfire Alerts. It's all one word, My Wildfire Alerts. And if you'd like to learn more about our entire wildfire safety program and preparation and more details about what we're doing, we have pgne.com wildfire safety. So I don't know if that fully answers the questions. It's a long answer about all that we're doing. And they've mentioned some bit about the high definition cameras that we're installing. We're installing many weather stations to keep aware of what the weather situation is in various microclimates that we have in the North Bay. It's probably a longer answer than I should have given, but it's a lot of information about what we're doing.
Great. So there'll be an opportunity to follow up at the table out there and all this. Thank
Rich,
you.
one thing over on this way. Sorry, I moved. Mark, I don't know if you want to speak to it all, but I'll mention that, the power safety, the public safety power shutoff program to disable power in areas, obviously they can't do it on a micro level, so it's more of a macro level when they have to shut down. We generally are very supportive of this in the fire service because it'll reduce those hazards under greater wind events. And I think it's the intention of the utilities to expand that. So people not only need to be prepared for wildfire, but also need to be prepared for having their power disabled for multiple days. So for the NRGs that are in the room and others, it's going to take all of us to communicate that to the public.
Yeah, if I can just, I think there'll be more information on the table. I know I don't want to take up too much time. There's a lot of conversation about vegetation removal and all the things that need to be done to be prepared for, to prevent fire at your home or be prepared for when a fire may be coming. One of the things that we will likely do in the event that we have a very high wind event or what we call a public safety power shutoff event, well, we'll be coordinating with a lot of the people that are here presenting. But to prevent the possibility of ignition, we will shut off the power. And that's going to be difficult to deal with. Someone may say, why? There's no hazard, there's no fire, or I'm in an area where I don't feel the high winds. But as we just discussed, the high winds are up on top of the ridges, and maybe you're down lower where they aren't happening. But our transmission lines go over those areas and through the densely vegetated areas. It's going to be critical for us all to work together to prepare for power being shut off for 24 hours, 48 hours, and in the more remote areas, it could be a couple of longer days.
Great, thank you. Okay, some questions related to insurance for Amy here. So let's see, how's the best way to do this? Great, okay.
Ready?
So here's the first one. My insurance company refuses to insure my house for more than $250 of replacement costs. I know the full replacement cost would be a lot more than that. What can I do?
Okay, so, well, the short answer is you shop around for a company that is going to give you the right amount of value on your coverage A. And just a very quick, our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit. We don't sell insurance. We are a resource for you as consumers. And in our work in the wildfire areas where we do post-disaster workshops and support, 2/3 of the people we work with who've lost their homes after wildfires come up short on their coverage by a lot. So the per square foot that you want in most of your areas, you want to be insured for at least $200 to $300, even $400 a square foot if you can. And at our website, we don't have time to go into a whole lot of detail here, although I am very grateful to NRG. We're going to be at your event on the 16th. Giving a lot more detail, but uphelp.org and then visit our table, and we have guidance on shopping in this challenging market. Is it okay if I just ask for a show of hands of how many people have gotten a non-renewal notice from anybody here being dropped by their home insurance in the last like 6 months? Yeah, well, we're friends now. She already gave me I've already recruited her to write some tips for us because she ended up having to go into the FAIR plan. I don't want to go into detail on that problem because so far you don't have it, so that's good. Just focus on is your coverage adequate right now? And we have very simple tips that start with call your insurance company, have a chat, take good notes, keep them in a safe place. You're probably underinsured is my message.
Great.
Uphelp.org, UPHELP, help.org, uphelp.org. And we have at our table, you can pick up the top 10 questions to ask about your home insurance policy, and it'll prompt you for some of those questions that you want to ask and those notes. But you're right, if an insurance company says we're not going to sell you more than $200 a square foot, try to get with a company that understands what it costs to put houses back in this state.
Great, thank you. And I personally went through with my insurance company, with going through that list of questions, it made major changes to a policy that I thought was a good one, and it wasn't. So it doesn't cost a lot more, but it's really worth your time. You'll be able to sleep at night much better. Thank you. I think Chris Riley actually answered this pretty well, but it's such an important question. It comes up so often. I like to revisit it, and that is, why don't we use the WIA, or the Amber Alert System, for every emergency?
Yeah, it's a good question. Definitely can answer that again. So the reason is because it covers a very wide area. You know, we have the ability to geographically locate where that warning goes, but as I said earlier, because it's based on cellular technology, there's actually bleed over. We don't know where those cell phone towers are because that's proprietary information for the cell carriers. So it's hard for us to really accurately know where that message is going to go. So we need to be very careful about the message. We like to send out very specific messages related to the incident when we get information from the incident commanders. And we have to be careful about where we tell people to go. If that message is bleeding over into an area that you really don't want to notify, is that the right thing to do? Probably not. We will use WIA. We have the ability to do it. We actually have 2 systems that can do it. As a matter of fact, we were the only county that sent out a wireless emergency alert during the Sonoma County fires. We sent one out because there were hundreds of people that were evacuating south from Sonoma and Napa during that fire. We opened a shelter at the Marin Center. We wanted to tell those people that were driving down the freeway, hey, there's a safe place for you to go, and we're offering that to you. So we will use it when the conditions are right, but only when they're right.
Great, thank you. And again, back to Chief Tyler and Chief Weber, and that is, why is it better to have a county-wide approach rather than just letting each agency do what they want to better prepare us?
I think mostly it's an economy of scale. You know, it's that we need to do these things across the fire, not knowing any boundaries. We need to try and apply more resources that we just don't have individually to be able to do. And so that's where we're looking for people to get involved and help support these initiatives, help fund those initiatives so that we can try and do this across the entire county.
And then I think it's important to add too, we know that the conditions here in Marin County in California and the nation are not going to be changing anytime soon. So we need to be coordinated and working together across the county. We also need a funding stream to support those activities going forward for decades. So that's part of this is not a one-time deal. This is like us working together, doing vegetation management around our homes, in our open space, on not just this year or next year, but every year ongoing. Stuff grows back. And it's also about us continuing to prepare individually, making sure we're educating ourselves. When new people move to the community, they're educated. So this is an ongoing effort, all of us working together, and we're going to need a funding stream to really actually make it work well.
Thank you. We're running short of time, but I think we have time for 2 more questions that are pretty common theme here. One of them, I'm going to put this over to Todd Lando. where are the resources for knowing what safe landscaping is, what kind of plants and so forth, and what's been done to educate landscape professionals, the gardeners and so forth, those agencies about these issues?
Fire Safe Marin in the early 1990s pioneered the concept, I think, of a fire-resistant plant list. We called it a pyrophytic plant list. We're talking more about fire resistance now, which is a little different thing. We have a list on our website that shows resources, helps you identify plants that should be in your landscaping and plants that shouldn't be, plants that you ought to remove. We've been working with local contractors. We're calling them green industry contractors, or rather they call themselves green industry contractors, tree services, landscapers, even landscape architects and designers, the people who you'll be reaching out to for help maintaining your property, designing that space. We held a workshop this spring to train them. We have a list on our website of resources, contractors, designers, and other service providers who've been through the basic training with Fire Safe Marin. I think it's been really important. The fire agencies for years have fielded thousands of questions from you asking who can do this work you're telling me I need to do. And as a government agency, it's really difficult for them to recommend a private contractor. Fire Safe Marin, we're a 501c3. We're in a little different position. We provided training. We have that list. firesafemarin.org/contractors. Really easy to remember. Go take a look at that. Look at our resources. firesafemarin.org/plants will take you to a page that will discuss the vegetation around your house. I really encourage you to look at our website for information. There's volumes and volumes. I realize it can be overwhelming, but you will find an answer to your question there.
Great. And the last question really has to do with schools. The demographic's a little different, but in certain groups, this is like the #1 issue. So what is the responsibility of schools for preparing for their students' safety, and what's their role in a larger emergency?
Do you want me to hit that? I've got it. I saw Michael Grant from the county schools there. Thank you for coming. The schools has been a fantastic partner. They're working on plans to have evacuation plans, whether it be shelter in place, communicating that with parents. They're also one of the best champions for getting information back into about 30,000 plus households in Marin. So our schools are fully involved and fully engaged with us in the conversation, and their local fire agencies, and they're a really, really important partner. And again, I think Michael Grant from the schools, Mary Jane Burke, our superintendent, they are in step with us in these discussions.
Thank you.
I want to throw in that the morning of November 8th, 2018, when I took that phone call related to Dr. Dewey's evacuation, President Shortall and I were actually with the school helping them develop their evacuation preparedness plan. Ross Valley School District, San Domenico School, several of these districts and schools are really engaged with us actively. Our goats are working there, and we stepped aside from a discussion with the school about wildfire evacuation preparedness to take that call from somebody who was actually evacuating at that moment.
Okay, well, we have, I think, used up all our time. I want to thank all the presenters, all the folks that are here today that spoke. There's a lot of people working on this program in the background. I want to thank all of our fire service folks, a lot of folks in the audience who aren't just up here, who are doing such good work around this fire issue. I also want to call your attention to a forum on really more related to wildfires and climate change. It's going to be on Wednesday the 8th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the San Rafael Community Center on B Street. There's going to be some really more of a dive into the connection between climate change and wildfires, and also some emphasis on the public health aspects and impacts of these fires. I want to thank you all for coming today. Invite you to take advantage of the tables that are outside. Lots of really excellent information out there. I want to encourage you to continue working on your own efforts to reduce fire risk at your own home, be emergency prepared, support the efforts within your neighborhood. And I want to strongly encourage you to stay listening to information that will be coming out in the coming weeks and months around this collaborative countywide effort to really make sure that Marin is absolutely as safe as it can be. So it's called Marin Ready Together, and we're going to need everybody on board and supporting it and helping each other make this county as safe as we can possibly be. So thank you again, everyone.